What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Monday, everybody. Okay, so let's talk about another part of the Jesse Michels interview with Peter Levenda, the best-selling author, who is also a friend of the show. He's been on the show once. I'm trying to get him for a second time, and I think I might be able to in the near future. So send me good vibes so we can get him again. The last time I got him for the show, it was during the UFO Twitter week. And I think that's probably what convinced him to go on there. He was going to be able to speak to people in real time. And that's always appealing. Our conversation is pretty interesting, in my opinion. We talk about different aspects of the phenomenon in general. But when I get him back, I do want to touch on a lot of the occult and Nazi stuff, which was touched upon with Jesse. But there were a few things that I still want to ask him, and I don't think anybody has asked him before. So let's hope it happens. Yeah. So in this interview, there was a major and significant update on Bob Lazar and his story. Let me tell you why. Because Bob, since he came out on that report from George Knapp in the Las Vegas TV station, the first time he came out, it was just his shadowy face. You couldn't see who he was. And a lot of the details that he presented on those conversations with George were contested. Specifically, his school history was very, very contested.
Identified him. We said we could not verify his background. And I will confide to you this. I don't believe he ever went to those schools. I don't believe Bob Laar could get a degree from Caltech or MIT for a very simple reason. At American universities, when you get a degree, an undergraduate degree, you have to take all kinds of core courses in subjects that you may not be interested in. Literature. I cannot possibly imagine, and Anna, you know Bob, I can't imagine Bob Laar sitting through a class in American Lit or reading poetry or something like that. He'd never stand for it. There is no way in hell that he sat through that stuff to get a degree. So what do we do? What do we do with that? Do we throw out the story? Here's how I rationalize it, is Bob would not be the first person to lie about his educational credentials in order to get a good job. As his friend of a long time, I've given him the opportunity. Bob, look, come clean on this. Let me know about, if it's a lie, come clean on it. Get it behind you. And he's never given me that satisfaction of saying, yeah, it's a lie. He maintains the story. I don't know what the true story is, whether they could make his records disappear. I have found people who said he was at Caltech, who said that they remember him being on the campus, but that's not enough to make the point. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. I don't care whether Bob Laar went to Caltech. The fact that he would lie about it is problematic, but I don't think it's a reason to toss out the entire story, because people do lie about their background in order to get a great job.
Famously, Dr. Stanton Friedman never believed Bob because of this. There are others who think that Bob is lying, such as Dr. Eric Davis, who's been very vocal about this. But there are also people who are like part of Dr. Eric Davis's circle, and they do believe Bob, or at least they give him the benefit of the doubt. So there's always a lot of debate. And for many, and I think for me as well, he's one of the most important names in UFO lore, period. Like, hadn't it been for him, and obviously George Knapp's work, we would have no idea what S4 and Area 51 mean. Think about that. So the fact that a new update on the Bob Lazar story just came out today, that's already a big deal. Let me tell you where, because yeah, there's always been debate over that, but somebody just came out, specifically Peter Levenda, to give a little more credibility to Bob's case by identifying one of the places where he worked, one of the credentials that he presented from a place called Bendix. And I just want you to hear what Peter Levenda has to say, and then we'll reconvene after so we can talk about this, because I think it's very significant. So here is Peter Levenda talking about Bob Lazar and his working history. Shout out to Paranormal on X, who does amazing memes and images. He posted the clip, and then Jesse Michels retweeted it. So here it is. The reason Peter Levenda believes Bob Lazar.
the thing that makes me kind of believe Lazar is something kind of personal to me. And that is, at one point, his badge showed Bendix, Field Engineering Division. And that like blew my brain away because I worked for Bendix. I worked for the Bendix Corporation in the 1970s, almost 6-7 years in the 1970s, until I think 79 or 1980. So for a long time, I worked for their international division. And the international division was located in Manhattan on Broadway, of all places, on the 13th floor of an office building, which is really weird because they don't have 13 floors, but ours did. And so we're on floor 13. And the field engineering division was legendary to us because, number one, they had very good field engineers. But number two, the real reason is they were a front. When CIA or somebody wanted to send somebody abroad under a cover as a knock, non-official cover, they would use Bendix Field Engineering Services. That was perfect because you're an engineer. It could be anything. And so you have an engineering, cover, and then you're going there as that cover. When Watergate happened, I was working for Bendix at the time, and our whole division went absolutely nuts because of all the stuff we had on paper. So suddenly the shredders are operating overtime, right?
Whoa.
And a lot of it had to do with the field engineering services.
Whoa.
Because it came out that we were training troops in Saudi Arabia. What the hell was Bendix Field Engineering doing training troops in Saudi Arabia?
Crazy. Wait, but you weren't involved in any of the intelligence
No,
activities?
I was just a guy working there, right?
Okay.
But my ears and eyes are open, right?
Yeah.
And so all of this is going on. So field engineering for us was the red flag. We knew what that meant. And then when I saw Lazar's ID, briefly in one book, there was a copy of it, and I saw it and I said, holy shit, Lazar worked for Bendix Field Engineering? That was his cover then. He didn't really work for them. This was a cover.
That's pretty big. I'll tell you what my little issue with that is, but that's pretty big in my opinion.
If it was a cover, he was there for some other reason.
Oh, so do you think he was intel or something before he was? What years were this?
That Lazar was?
Yeah, was that
this
Bendix?
was after me, so I don't know. I think the broadcast with Knapp was after me. I don't know if he was Area 51 while I was at Bendix or not. I left Bendix in 79, I think. So I don't know if he was at Bendix or if he had that ID in the 80s. If he did, that's after.
It must have been before his Area 51 experience.
Right.
But that's a huge data point. If you're saying that being a field engineering officer as part of Bendix is often, not always, associated with intelligence,
right?
And he was in that group before working for Area 51, ostensibly, right? Because you don't blow the whistle on Area 51 and then get a job in the field engineering.
No.
So that's pretty interesting as a data point.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's all it is at this point. You have to kind of figure out what does that mean.
But to you, that lent credibility to his.
That lent credibility to Lazar, if only because I knew there was more going on than they were saying.
Sure.
So if Lazar is not mentioning, he might have been under an NDA. It might have been a security thing for him not to mention Bendix. But then again, maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe he really, had that tag for some legitimate reason that I, as in my lowly position at Bendix, would never have known. But I just know that during Watergate, it was an issue. Field engineering especially was an issue. And Bendix had people all over the world in other positions, not having to do with field engineering, that got the attraction of local governments that didn't like them. We lost a guy in Uruguay, was captured by the Tupamaros right out of his office. And I believe he was killed. So Bendix was always on the radar of governments overseas that saw Bendix as the long arm of the U.S. government because we had a lot of defense contracts.
Well, if you shake out Pro on the Lazar story, then all of a sudden that allows for saucers and hangers, physical material, not only physical material, actual crafts in the possession of the United States military.
Right.
That is crazy. And yeah, my only issue with this is that they seem to be alluding to Bob having this position before he came forward, meaning that he was probably working undercover of some sorts. And I don't know if it lends credibility to the story, if anything, but you guys can correct me. I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, but it kind of feels that this data point means that Bob was working for Bendix undercover, potentially, before he came out with his story. So where does that leave him? And he doesn't mention working for Bendix. Did he sign an NDA that doesn't allow him to say publicly that he worked there? Very intriguing, very, very intriguing. And we know that Luigi Venditelli is coming out with the Bob Laar movie. I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out, but hopefully it comes out by the end of the year. It would be a great moment for it to come out. And I don't know if they're going to even touch on this or if they're just going to tell the story that we already know and adding a few details. But That's coming out soon. So Bob is going to be part of the news pretty soon. And now this comes out. So what do you guys think about this? I am fairly puzzled by this new development of Bob Lazar. Peter Levenda believe in him. I guess it's a good thing though, but it kind of confused me a little bit. So was Bob from the Intel community before coming out with George Knapp? Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but let me know in the comments. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this new development? Peter Levenda having worked at Bendix, just like Bob Laar, about a decade earlier. And this made Peter believe Bob's story a little bit more. That's big. I wonder what Dr. Eric Davis thinks about that. But let me know what you think. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can also become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated, so thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Peter Levenda and Bob Laar, always. Bye.